it just makes you feel better to know that someone else understands. So you even that like small sense of security and hope helps them.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever energy might be surrounding them, kind of just.
Well, the first step to anything.
Yes.
And when I say I'm being very loose here, I'm sorry, but the first step to fixing any problem is empowerment, is understanding that there is a problem and that you're not going crazy.
Yeah.
And then understanding that there's also a way to begin to control it or make it better.
Yeah.
So empowerment is very important in any situation.
But what I mean is, for some people who don't realize that they have a problem and just think that they're stressed out and angry because there are things in their life that aren't going right, when really it's an oppression or something else.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that it's not something that they don't have control over, and they think, I'm just not at 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not doing what I should be doing in life. When really you're saying, no, it's spiritual.
Yeah. Keith, do you have any, and I'm not looking for statistics or numbers, obviously, but do you believe that there are a lot of people out there that are going through something, and I'm not just labeling it demonic, but something dark, that isn't just, bad luck, that have no clue and will never, ever have an answer to what their problem is because it might be paranormal and they just can't think about it being paranormal or accept it.
Or that thought doesn't even cross their minds that it might be paranormal.
Do you think there's a large number of people this happens to, or do you think it's very rare that happens?
I think, as far as this aspect of it goes, I think it's more than meets the surface. There, I think there are a lot of people who are involved in these dark situations, and a lot of them are very reluctant to talk about it. And I think it happens kind of more often than we actually realize. Because the more I talk to people and the more we associate with people who are in these situations, we do find that it is very, very expansive. And that's another point, that people think that, of course, the field of paranormal investigation can be truly fascinating. It's very, very fascinating. You're investigating these things that are so little known, and yet it obviously is a reality. There's just too much evidence out there for it not to be a reality. Yet the more disturbing aspects, that's people sometimes think it's fun to get into this, and actually it's very, very draining. It can affect your life in very, very serious matters. And Sandra and I always, and our team members, we always pray for protection. We pray that nothing will follow us home, and we do that every single investigation of this type, and even investigations that are not so dark. We actually do pray before we leave an area that nothing will be allowed to follow us home that's of a dark nature. We say only that which is angelic and of the light, because it does happen quite often that people are involved in these unwelcoming situations, and it really does affect your life. I know I know a well-known pastor who's a demonologist, and he was one time he was getting this position that he had to be there exactly on time. It would be a great promotion, a great career move for him, and he came outside, and he lives in a nice neighborhood, a nice area, and nobody is attacking anybody there. He came out, and all four of his tires were flattened.
Oh, wow.
And he had to be at this, and it was just that morning. He had to be at a place at a certain time to get this promotion, and all four of his tires were flattened, and just things like bizarre things like that. And yes, you can point it to coincidence, but it's just all four of his tires were slashed for some reason, and it was to do with the ministry, this promotion that he was getting into. So they're just very, very bizarre things. And if you don't really get it, it will make sure that you get it. It will leave some kind of trace, and that seems to be a cosmic law, that it will identify itself in some way. It could be something as simple as 3 knocks on the door. You open it up, nobody's there. Something, a clock will stop at a certain time. Something very, very subtle, but it will let you know, hey, this is my calling card, and you're going too far into this, and I'm letting you know you're being watched. It's always something will let you know that. It will give you a sign, a spiritual calling card.
Yeah, and that's something that you touched on something there that I think of quite often in my head. You said something about coincidence, and I think often that we have all become, and please don't get me wrong, things can be debunked, but we've all come too often to think of the most logical explanations, and yeah, that's what it's going to be. Oh yeah, I can explain that by this, but I'm always quick to turn back and say, even though we can explain that, we also could think of it as this. So even though it's explained away or easily explained, we also sometimes have to put those brakes back on and say, yes, we can explain it, and it could not be paranormal. However, it could be paranormal, and we do need to put the brakes on about explaining things away sometimes, because it's very easy. We've done it for centuries. We've explained things away, and sometimes maybe we need to go back onto the paranormal side and say, even though we explained that, and yes, there's a tree outside the house that could be tapping on the house, that could possibly still be something just letting me know it's here too. And I still need to research it, and I still need to investigate that. So I appreciate what you said about, it could be coincidence that the 4 tires are flat, but he was supposed to have all this go on that day. So it's a little more to him or to us than coincidence that his tires were flat. So I agree with that very much. Thank you. Getting into or pulling back a little bit from the darker side of things. You don't hear a lot of people talk about angelology. And you just mentioned that you do pray for protection and you pray for only angelic light to come through. And, can you tell us a little bit about what we should look for, or what are signs of angelic visitations or angelic activity?
Angelic activity, yes. Sandra and I do believe very much in the angelic realm. I've believed in it even before that was popular among most of the population. When I was a teenager, I was and of course, when I say a teenager, I'm talking about going back to the 1970s. So it's going back a ways. That I've always believed in angels. I believe they're very, very close. My parents always taught me that angels were real and that they were around us. And you will see signs. You will see signs of them. They don't really poke you like the demonic spirits will, but they will let you know they're there. One time we were at a situation where a woman had inadvertently invited a spirit home with her. She was at an abandoned asylum, a partially abandoned asylum, and her family were doing just a ghost hunt and everything, and she felt very much that there was the spirit of a little girl there. She really got that impression, and she said, "Oh, I will help you. If you come with me, I'll help you." Of course, that turned out to be a deceptive spirit, and her life was turned upside down. She called us frantic if we could come in to help her. She was even starting to go under mild states of possession where she wasn't herself, and it just was working away at her. She was terrified of this, and of course we were doing a blessing in her house, but some of that is mild provocation when you're blessing a house, and she was getting very, very afraid. All she could concentrate on was demonic spirits in her house. So we actually did. I called upon. It was a long shot, but she was so terrified. I prayed. I said, "May we please see a sign of angelic presence." And of course, Sandra was videotaping this all the time. And when I said that, all of a sudden, all these sparkling lights started to come down surrounding me. Now, of course, you couldn't see that with the naked eye, but on the video, you could actually see, and we were watching it as it happened, all these sparkling lights coming down right upon where I was standing. So I did take that as to be a sign of angelic presence there.
Wow.
So it's not all bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I mean, it's important because obviously we know throughout life, with every positive there's a negative, and vice versa. With every negative there's a positive. So obviously it's our conviction and our beliefs that help with these situations, going into a possible dark haunting or demonic haunting, and calling on the positive and calling on an angelic light. I don't know if you have that video that it's able to be shared, or if you care to share it. I would love to see it. I absolutely would love to see that, because often and I'm sure you yourself can attest to this, you feel that rush or that positivity coming in when things are, knock on wood, we've not been on a demonic haunting yet ourselves. We've not had to go so far as to call upon angelic light, but you feel that positive rush when you're in any type of a situation and you want more positive instead of negative coming through. I'm just curious, could you feel it, or was it all just what you were seeing?
It was what we were seeing at that time. It was visual, but there have been times when we've blessed the house, we've called upon an angelic presence, and we do a cleansing, a spiritual cleansing, so to speak. We don't just cast out the negative energy. We invite positive energy in. We pray that angelic spirits will take the place of whatever has been cast out. And you can actually feel a difference in the room. People walk into it, they smell like a fragrance of. One time we were doing a house cleansing, and it just smelled so rotten in there. It was a terrible stench, almost of sulfur or decay. And after we blessed it, suddenly it was replaced by the scent of fresh apples. And that was refreshing. And so you will actually, the atmosphere will change and become a lot lighter, and you will sense the presence of angels. And while we're doing these blessings, I try to paint a picture verbally of angelic presence. So people will they're concentrating. They're so traumatized often about these horrible negative spirits. I try to paint a picture of a large, bright, powerful angel being in the room, so that will they'll try to accept that in their minds, and that's what they'll start visualizing instead of being afraid of every knock and creak in the house.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Only for my own curiosity here, before we move on to the next subject, how often do you get the call, or do you get the tap on the shoulder, if you will, the inquiry that there's possibly something demonic going on? Is it weekly, monthly, a couple times a year? Because I know, I mean, near is not just we're going after demonic activity. You obviously are doing a lot of your own paranormal research and helping families in general. But
not only that, I feel like nowadays people, anything that's negative, they think is demonic.
Right.
So.
Right. Right, and I usually when I'm in the client's house, I try not to use the term demonic too much, because that paints such a vivid picture. Yeah. I say contrary spirits or negative parasitic spirits, because that describes a lot of it, because they become very draining. So I would say at least twice a month. Wow. To get these signs and everything. In fact, even today, I knew that we'd be talking about this subject on the show tonight, and there was one thing after another started getting in the way of this.
Really?
I came outside, and for some reason my tail light was on. And of course my battery was drained, and I was just about to leave Slater Mill, and it turned out that there was a little bar by the brake pedal that will cause that, and that was kind of stuck. So my battery was drained. Then on top of that, I came down with a migraine headache, which I'm prone to, and so I took my medication, and of course, fortunately, I was able to get to a garage where they helped me out and didn't charge me. So that was very much a blessing. And I came home, and of course, by the time I come home, I'm very nauseous and wiped out. But I took some rest, and of course, my wife Sandra takes very, very good care of me and makes sure I'm under the right medication and everything. So God willing, I was able to do this interview. It just seemed that there was one roadblock after another earlier, so I did pray specifically about that I would be able to do this interview, and it would be successful. And thank God, by the grace of God, here we all are.
Yes.
Thank God.
I feel now, even before I was been involved in the paranormal myself, I too suffer from migraines from time to time. Yeah. I don't even want to say from time to time. It's now like many times a month I get a migraine, but so I can understand and I appreciate the fact that you're on with us right now, because they're not fun.
Yeah.
And